Welcome back, everyone. I am Dr. Flux, and this is General Psychology. In the last module, we explored the complexities of self-awareness, theory of mind, and emotions. How we understand ourselves, how we recognize that others have their own thoughts and feelings, and how emotions shape our experiences. Today, we're shifting our focus outward. What draws us to certain people? What makes someone attractive? Attraction is more than just personal preference. It's shaped by biology, psychology, culture, and even evolutionary pressures. Before we dive into today's topic, let's do a quick review from Module 7. Theory of mind plays a role in the following: A. Empathy, B. Deception, C. Social emotions, or D. All of the above. If you chose D. All of the above, you've got it. Theory of mind isn't just about recognizing that other people have thoughts. It helps us predict how they feel, what they might do next, and how to comfort them. Let's do another one. Opioids mimic the effects of which naturally occurring neurotransmitter? Is it A. Serotonin, B. Dopamine, C. Endorphins, or D. Oxytocin? If you picked C. Endorphins, you're spot on. These are the body's natural painkillers, and opioid drugs hijack the system, sometimes with dangerous consequences. Here's where we're headed today. First, we'll tackle the question, what is attraction? We'll break down the biological, social, and personal factors that shape who we're drawn to. Then we'll take a look at natural versus sexual selection. We'll explore how evolutionary forces influence attraction and the differences between survival-driven traits and mate selection traits. We'll take a look at some evolutionary psychology models of attraction. These models explore how our understanding of history and anthropology has motivated us to create theoretical models of how the attraction-related behaviors that we observe today could have been products of evolution. We'll then take a look at some critiques of those theories, specifically why traditional theories don't tell the whole story and how culture and social structures challenge some of these evolutionary assumptions. We'll finally take a look at some alternate models of attraction that go beyond reproduction, exploring how social bonds, identity, and attachment shape this, and then we'll conclude and bring in some review. Our social experience is fundamentally human, and yet we don't often give a second thought to what attracts us to others. But this process is far more complex than it may appear. By the end of this lecture, you'll have a richer understanding of how we choose partners, what influences those choices, and how attraction is about more than just biology. It's about connection, identity, and culture. Let's dive in. So what is attraction? Attraction is something that we all experience, but can be difficult to define. We often think of attraction in romantic or sexual terms, but it can be much broader than that. Attraction influences who we befriend, who we admire, and who we feel drawn to in different social situations. It's not just about looks, it's about connection, chemistry, and compatibility. So what shapes attraction? Attraction is influenced by three key factors. Our biology plays a major role in attraction. Some preferences may be rooted in evolutionary survival strategies, while others are tied to hormones, genetics, and even unconscious sensory cues. What we find attractive isn't just biological, though. It's also culturally constructed. Beauty standards shift over time and vary across societies. For example, body shape preferences have changed dramatically. Historically, larger bodies were often seen as a sign of wealth and health, while modern Western media tends to favor thinness or muscularity. Fashion, grooming, and social status all influence attraction. What's considered stylish or desirable changes with time and trends. Attraction isn't just about what looks good in an absolute sense. It's about what aligns with our social values, the trends we pay attention to, and our own identities. And that brings us into our individual histories and how those shape who we are attracted to. Attachment styles can influence our attraction patterns. Past relationships create templates for what we find desirable or unattractive. And familiarity plays a role. People often find traits that are similar to their own social group or upbringing more attractive. Attraction is deeply personal. It's not just about who we choose. It's about who we are, where we come from, and how we see the world. With this foundation in mind, let's move on to the evolutionary forces that shape attraction: natural selection and sexual selection. Attraction doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's deeply influenced by natural selection and sexual selection, which are two key mechanisms of evolution. Natural selection is about one thing: survival. It favors traits that help an organism live long enough to pass on its genes. Some key principles of natural selection include that it shapes traits that improve survival. Stronger immune systems, better camouflage, efficient metabolisms, these all promote broad survival of an organism. It's driven by adaptation to the environment. Organisms with beneficial traits are more likely to survive and reproduce. And natural selection affects all individuals of a species, regardless of their sex. But survival alone isn't enough. Organisms also need to find mates and reproduce. This is where sexual selection comes in. Sexual selection is different from natural selection in that it favors traits that increase reproductive success, even if they don't directly help survival. Some key features include that it's driven by competition for mates, either by impressing them or outcompeting rivals. Sometimes this can lead to extreme traits that make individuals more attractive, even if they're costly to survival. These traits generally increase reproductive efficiency of a species, making their reproductive efforts more successful in producing offspring. And sexual selection only affects individuals of reproductive age. Traits that don't appear until adulthood can still be selected for. Some examples include a peacock's large, colorful tail, which makes it more attractive to peahens, but it also makes it more vulnerable to predators. In humans, deeper voices in men and larger eyes in women may have evolved as signals of sexual maturity. Sexual selection happens in two main ways: intersexual selection, which is related to attracting a mate, and intrasexual selection, which is related to competition between members of the same sex. Let's take a look at each of them individually. Intrasexual selection happens when one sex chooses mates based on certain traits. These traits usually signal fertility, health, or genetic fitness. Some common fertility signals include skin clarity, where smooth and even skin can signal hormonal health and fertility, and body odor. Sometimes subconscious cues in scent can indicate fertility and even immune system compatibility. Common health signs include things like facial symmetry, which is a sign of genetic stability and developmental health, as well as muscle tone and posture, which helps to indicate physical health and vitality. In short, intersexual selection is about choosing the best possible mate to ensure strong, healthy offspring. Intrasexual selection happens when individuals compete with others of the same sex for reproductive access. This competition can be physical or social. Physical traits that are linked to intrasexual competition include things like testes size. In some species, larger testes mean greater sperm production, which can outcompete other males. It also includes things like the ovarian reserve. Females with a higher ovarian reserve or more efficient follicular selection may have a reproductive advantage, influencing competition over mates or resources. Social signaling can also impact intrasexual selection. In many human cultures, high-status individuals have greater reproductive success. And in both animals and humans, dominance behaviors can increase mating opportunities as a display of strength. In many species, this results in sexual polymorphism, physical and behavioral differences between the sexes in a species as they are related to sexual selection. Let's do a quick attention check. What's the key difference between natural and sexual selection? A. Natural selection focuses on attracting mates, while sexual selection focuses on survival. B. Natural selection promotes traits that help with survival, while sexual selection promotes traits that help with reproductive success, even if they don't aid survival. C. Sexual selection only occurs in animals, not humans. D. There is no difference between natural and sexual selection. If you chose B, you're absolutely right. Natural selection is more geared towards overall species survival, while sexual selection is related to an organism's ability to attract mates and reproduce. Now that we understand natural and sexual selection, we can explore how these forces shape human attraction through evolutionary psychology. Evolutionary psychology suggests that our modern preferences are deeply rooted in our evolutionary past, shaped by challenges faced by early humans. But what did human life actually look like back then? And how do those conditions help explain attraction today? This is one of the promises and pitfalls of evolutionary psychology. There is no way for us to truly know what life was like for early humans. And sometimes we extrapolate our current cultural experiences in ways that don't always match up with the fossil record or other anthropological evidence. But let's take a look at some of these theories. For most of human history, our ancestors lived as hunter-gatherers in small cooperative groups. In this environment, survival was uncertain. Food, shelter, and protection were daily concerns. Social bonds were also essential. Alliances helped to increase our chances of survival. Because of these pressures, evolutionary psychologists argue that attraction evolved as a way to maximize reproductive success. The traits we find appealing today may be reflections of survival and reproductive advantages from the past. This idea is central to the parental investment theory, first proposed by Trivers in 1972. In evolutionary terms, reproduction comes with different costs for males and females. For females, pregnancy, childbirth, and childcare are physically and energetically demanding. For males, reproduction is less costly. Sperm is abundant, and there's no clear biological requirement to invest in offspring beyond conception. This often results in females taking a more conservative strategy when it comes to choosing partners. Parental investment theory makes the following claims. Males can increase reproductive success by mating with multiple partners, and females benefit from a selective, cautious strategy, choosing mates who offer resources, protection, or commitment. This predicts different mating behaviors between males and females, a hypothesis that has been tested in some real-world studies. A classic study by Clark and Hatfield in 1989, entitled Gender Differences in Receptivity to Sexual Offers, tested whether men and women respond differently to casual sexual opportunities. In this study, male and female Confederates of average attractiveness approached strangers on a college campus in two different studies, one in 1978 and the other in 1982. I kind of love the way that this paper describes these Confederates. This quote lists them as existing at a range from slightly unattractive to moderately attractive. I'm not really sure who was making these judgments. These Confederates would then approach students on campus and state, "I've been noticing you around campus. I find you very attractive." Again, the description in this paper is somewhat hilarious. They were instructed to approach subjects who were attractive enough that they would be willing to actually sleep with them if given the opportunity. Though again, I'm not sure who was making these judgments or what criteria they were using. After approaching the student and letting them know that they found them attractive, they would then ask one of three potential questions. Would you go out with me tonight? Would you come over to my apartment tonight? Or would you go to bed with me tonight? Here you can see the two tables summarizing the results from both the 1978 and 1982 studies. The gender differences here are quite extreme. For women, about 50% agreed to go on a date, few agreed to visit the apartment, and none of them agreed to have sex. The men's responses follow a different trend. More than 50% agreed to go on a date, even more agreed to visit the apartment, and up to 75% agreed to have sex. So how did this study interpret these findings? Their interpretation stated that men are more willing to engage in casual sex because they have lower parental investment costs. It also implied that women are more selective because the risks of pregnancy and child rearing are higher. Another idea that comes out of evolutionary psychology builds off of this, stating that men and women take different strategies in terms of the timescale of their optimizations in choosing relationships. This gets into the differences between short-term versus long-term mating strategies. This idea is expanded on in Buss's seminal 1989 study, Sex Differences in Human Mate Preferences, Evolutionary Hypotheses Tested in 37 Cultures. To explore global patterns of attraction, Buss conducted a study across 37 cultures, surveying 10,047 participants from every inhabited continent. The findings showed that men prioritized physical attractiveness. Physical cues like youth, symmetry, and fertility signals were valued in potential mates. Women, on the other hand, prioritized financial stability and ambition. Traits linked to resource provision were more important for mate selection. These patterns were found across cultures, suggesting biological influences on attraction. But attraction isn't just about choosing a mate, it's about keeping them. And this brings us to evolutionary psychology's perspectives on the differences in expressing jealousy between men and women. Buss summarizes their work in this domain in a book chapter published in the year 2000 titled The Dangerous Passion: Why Jealousy is as Necessary as Love and Sex. Jealousy may seem like a negative emotion, but Buss would propose that it serves an adaptive function in terms of evolution, helping individuals protect their reproductive investments. It's based on the following main points. Because fertilization occurs in females, they always know that they are the mother of their children. Males face paternal uncertainty. Without DNA tests, there's no way to be sure that a child is theirs. This paternity uncertainty hypothesis suggests that men are more distressed by sexual infidelity because it threatens their reproductive investment, whereas women are more distressed by emotional infidelity because it threatens commitment and resource stability. This chapter discusses some of Buzz's previous research findings around what types of infidelity different genders are more upset over. Buzz found that American men were more concerned with sexual infidelity, endorsed by 61% of men versus 13% of women, whereas American women were more upset with emotional infidelity, endorsed by 87% of women versus 39% of men. These findings align with Buzz's evolutionary jealousy model, which proposes that jealousy evolved as a protective mechanism, ensuring reproductive investment isn't wasted on non-biological offspring. Evolutionary psychology offers valuable insights into attraction, but its models are not without critics. Many researchers argue that these theories oversimplify human relationships, ignore cultural and economic influences, and assume rigid social structures that are more related to our current cultural context than that of our ancestors. So let's break these critiques down. Evolutionary psychology focuses heavy on reproductive fitness, arguing that attraction is primarily about passing on genes. But humans don't form relationships just for reproduction. We build complex social bonds for emotional fulfillment, companionship, and to share life goals. These frameworks overemphasize reproductive fitness. Not all relationships are reproductive. Attraction exists in same-sex relationships, non-reproductive partnerships, and even platonic bonds. Humans engage in long-term social bonding even when reproduction is not the goal. They also express a rigidity around gender roles. Evolutionary psychology often reinforces specific gender roles, with men as providers as women as caregivers. However, modern research shows fluidity in gender roles across time and culture. Women are not always dependent on male resources, and men can become primary caregivers. These models also often lack emotional complexity. Attraction is shaped by attachment styles, socialization, and personal history. Love, commitment, and emotional needs go far beyond reproductive strategies alone. The takeaway here? Human attraction is influenced by reproduction, but it's also shaped by psychological and social factors that extend far beyond genetic survival. Evolutionary psychology models also often suggest that certain mate preferences are universal. However, attraction varies significantly across cultures. Attraction is not biologically universal at all domains. Some cultures value youth, others value experience. Some cultures prioritize physical beauty, others prioritize social standing. These models also often ignore the impact of economic pressures. Attraction changes with social and economic conditions. In unstable environments, people may prioritize partners with financial stability, whereas in wealthier or more egalitarian societies, emotional compatibility and shared values becomes more important than material resources. Additionally, education and ideology shape attraction. Access to higher education changes what people look for in a partner, and political and ideological shifts affect marriage, monogamy, and partner choice in many domains of society. In short, cultural and social conditions play a massive role in attraction and are often overlooked in traditional evolutionary models. One of the most controversial assumptions in much of evolutionary psychology is the idea that humans evolved to live in male-dominated nuclear families. Anthropological evidence suggests that early humans lived in cooperative, communal groups where child-rearing was shared among multiple adults and not just mothers, where food and resources were provided by both men and women, and where pair bonding was fluid and often based on environmental conditions. In 2021, Rebecca Sear published an article that examined some of these claims in the context of anthropological evidence, entitled "The Male Breadwinner Nuclear Family is Not the Traditional Human Family, and Promotion of This Myth May Have Adverse Health Consequences." Sears challenges the mid-20th century idea that humans evolved from male-headed nuclear families. She discusses how much of this was shaped by the man-the-hunter hypothesis, which emerged from a 1966 symposium and led to a book published in 1968. This theory outlined an early division of labor, with men doing the hunting and women doing the gathering and childcare. However, modern evidence has consistently rejected the rigidity of this idea. The concept of the male breadwinner is a relatively recent cultural invention, at least on an evolutionary timeline, and it's not necessarily a biological necessity. Fossil evidence and current anthropology has many examples demonstrating that parenting was often and still can be collaborative. Many families and societies involve multiple caregivers, with grandparents, siblings, and community members often playing key roles. The paper also discusses how there are many negative modern health outcomes that are associated with the ideal of the nuclear family. This includes maternal depression. When childcare is placed solely on women, mental health often suffers. It also includes parental burnout, Raising children without community support leads to stress and exhaustion, and it can have negative child outcomes. Children benefit from having multiple caregivers, not just their parents. Evolutionary models that assume rigid nuclear families fail to account for the diversity of human social structures throughout history. Let's do a quick attention check. Sears 2021 discusses how anthropological evidence suggests that many early humans engaged in A. Solo parenting practices, B. Cooperative parenting, C. Polygamous family structures, or D. Inflexible family structures. The correct answer here is B. Cooperative parenting. Early humans likely shared parenting responsibilities within their larger social groups. Many evolutionary models assume that humans evolved for strict monogamy, but research shows high cultural variability in sexual exclusivity. Some cultures practice strict monogamy, whereas others allow polygamy, polyandry, or flexible relationship structures overall. Some of this may be driven by resource availability influencing mating strategies. In resource-scarce environments, pair bonding and monogamy may be more advantageous, whereas in resource-rich environments, more flexible relationships can thrive. In short, monogamy is not necessarily a biological default. It's one of many strategies shaped by culture, environment, and personal choice that go into how humans express themselves sexually in relationships. So far, we've explored evolutionary explanations for attraction, how natural and sexual selection shape mate preference. But attraction isn't just biological. It's deeply influenced by culture, psychology, and personal experience. Let's explore some alternative models that highlight the roles of social influence, early development, and identity in shaping attraction. Attraction isn't fixed. It can shift across time and culture. What people find attractive is often shaped by social norms, media, and historical context. Beauty standards are socially influenced and often culturally constructed. What's considered attractive varies across societies. Attraction can also change over time. In the Renaissance, fuller bodies were idealized. In 1920s America, a boyish flapper look was fashionable. And today, social media amplifies trends, making beauty standards more fluid and faster changing than ever. Media and social communication also shape attraction. The rise of Photoshop, Snapchat filters, and cosmetic procedures has created unrealistic beauty ideals. Representation matters. What we see in movies, on television, on advertising, and on social media influences what we perceive as desirable. Attraction isn't just about biological fitness. It's also a reflection of social values and cultural messaging. Our early experiences also can shape our attachment styles, which influence who we're drawn to in relationships. Early emotional bonds shape partner choice. Psychologists suggest that our early caregiver relationships influence our adult romantic preferences. People often seek familiar emotional patterns in their relationships, even when they can be unhealthy. Attachment theory suggests that people develop one of 4 different attachment styles which influence their romantic relationships. Secure attachment is associated with comfort with intimacy, balanced with independence. Anxious attachment involves craving closeness and fearing abandonment. Avoidant attachment is characterized by value for independence and struggles with emotional intimacy. And disorganized attachment involves internal conflict when it comes to intimacy and connection. Most evolutionary theories focus on heterosexual reproductive pairings, but attraction isn't just about reproduction. Where does same-sex attraction fit into these models? Evolutionary explanations struggle to account for same-sex attraction as it doesn't lead to direct reproduction. Some theories suggest that same-sex attraction may provide social bonding advantages or provoke cooperative survival strategies. Additionally, identity can also shape attraction. Attraction isn't just about mate selection, it's about connection, self-expression, and belonging. We often find people who share our identities when forming relationships. Queer identities in particular challenge traditional models of attraction, showing that intimacy and desire can be fluid. Regardless of sexual orientation, attraction can also go beyond reproduction in other ways. People form deep, meaningful relationships that aren't always focused on having children. Love, companionship, and emotional support are just as important for biological fitness as is reproduction. All of this demonstrates the deep complexity of attraction. Now let's take a moment to reflect on your own experience. What traits do you find attractive in others? Are they physical, emotional, social, intellectual? Do they align with the biological and cultural influences that we've discussed today? How has your attraction been shaped by your environment? Can you recognize the impact of culture, media, or personal history in your preferences? How does this shape your relationships? Understanding attraction isn't just about theory. It's about recognizing how it operates in our own lives. We've covered a lot in this lecture. breaking down the many factors that shape attraction, from biological drives to social influences. Now let's tie everything together with a quick review. Attraction is shaped by multiple forces: biological factors, cultural influences, and personal experiences. Natural selection favors traits that improve survival, whereas sexual selection favors traits that enhance reproductive success. We explored several evolutionary psychology models of attraction, including parental investment theory, differences between short and long-term strategies in choosing partners, and different patterns of jealousy. We dove into critiques of evolutionary models. Many researchers believe that these models overemphasize reproduction and ignore emotional and social factors. Attraction can vary across cultures. The nuclear family is a more modern invention, and monogamy is not always the standard for human sexuality. We also discussed a few alternative models of attraction, discussing how beauty can be socially constructed and what is attractive changes over time. We talked about how attachment styles can influence partner choice, and how attraction isn't just about reproduction. Before we wrap up, let's do a bit of review. Intersexual selection explains attraction through A. How attractiveness impacts mate selection across sex. B. Social displays of strength. C. Competition between individuals of the same sex. Or D. Flaunting financial security. The answer here is A. Intersexual selection explores selection across the sexes, how males choose females or how females choose males. Intrasexual selection takes a look at competition within the same sex. Let's do another one. Childhood development may impact attraction based on how it influences A. Sexual dimorphism, B. Attachment, C. Testes size, or D. Intrasexual selection. If you chose B. Attachment, you're correct. Attachment styles develop in response to how a child is raised, and they can have a profound impact on attraction during adulthood. Attraction is one of the most fundamental aspects of the human experience, but it's also deeply complex. It's shaped by biology, culture, psychology, and our personal history. No single theory can fully capture it. Our key takeaway for today is that attraction is dynamic. It shifts across time, culture, and even within a single person. Understanding it can provide deeper insights into our own self-awareness and recognizing the way that we connect with others. So as you go forward, think about what shapes your own attraction. How do your experiences, environment, and biology intersect to create the connections that you seek? Thanks for joining me on this journey through human attraction. As always, remember to stay curious, stay resilient, and above all, live life in flux. I'll see you in the next lecture.